Hello and welcome to my channel. Vice Rhino here, and joining me this evening I've got Helen Greene, who is the ambassador and virtual support group leader with the Recovering from Religion Foundation. She's also the co-host of the RFRX podcast. Link for that is down in the description. Helen, how are you tonight?
Good. Thank you for so much for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
My pleasure. So we're doing things a little differently tonight. I know normally I would be streaming on my live streaming channel because that's what it's for. But apparently YouTube doesn't let you do fundraisers unless you have at least 10,000 subscribers, and not enough of y'all subscribe to me over there, so I can't do that.
Oh.
But that's okay. So I'm over here so I can do a fundraiser. So all super chats this evening will be going directly to Recovering from Religion. And I believe YouTube does not take a cut. But I did see Scott Dillahunt donate. Oh no, that was a. I saw Scott Dillahunt donated $20, and it only says we got $15. He donated in Canadian, and the fundraiser is ticking in US. So it was just a currency difference. So yeah, YouTube doesn't take its 30% cut for super chats when it's a charity. So you guys can rest assured that your money will all be going to the correct organization there. And Helen, you reached out to me so that we could have a talk about the Reproductive Rights Task Force.
Yes. So when we are Recovering from Religion found out about the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we, of course, were just like a lot of other people feeling very frustrated and distressed. But we decided, like, okay, well, this has happened. What can we do? So
Yeah.
we are working with other secular organizations and working within ourselves to offer because we offer hope, healing, support for people that are, dealing with doubt or dealing, with some things, questioning religion, dealing with navigating certain things within religious structures. And this is a religious issue.
Yes.
So we were like, okay, mofos, we have to do something. And basically what we're doing is working with within ourselves and other secular organizations to offer as many resources as we can as possible to our clients that are going to be chatting or calling in about this issue. Because the reality of this issue is that even people that are in religious systems that might be teaching people that they're pro-life and all these different things, you're going to hit a wall where you're going to have to make a decision. And we want to be able to give people those resources that we're looking for. It's the legal side of things is a little weird right now because each state is trying to navigate what they're doing and how that translates. Like, let's say you live in one state that is banning abortion and you go to another state to get your abortion, how is that going to pan out? So that type of stuff we're also trying to figure out as this goes along, what is going to go down for that state and what people can do regarding that issue. Also too, we're trying to also offer, if you are a person that is just like, hey, this is fucked up, I want to give money to organizations that are helping people get access to reproductive health care.
Yes,
we want to offer those. We want to offer those information for those organizations as well.
I did notice on the website there's a nice concise list of like here's a section on like the legal issues that we're facing right now. Here's a section on the what you can do to help, and here's like organizations you can donate to that have been properly vetted. Now, I think we actually jumped the gun a little bit here. Let's back it up a little bit. And for anyone who's not familiar, what does Recovering from Religion do?
So for those of you who have been living under a rock, no, I'm just kidding. We are a organization where we offer hope, healing, and support to those that are dealing with issues of doubt and non-belief. And so if you're struggling with anything, and it's not our job to deconvert anyone, because we feel that that process, like those of us who have deconverted, was our process and a thing that we had to do on our own. But we want to offer that ability for you to talk to a trained agent. Either you can call or chat in, you can go to our website, or you can call, talk to a live person. We're available 24/7. And if you're dealing with like navigating difficult family situations, or if you are, dealing with the fear of hell, or if you're queer and you're in religious structures that don't accept you, or, anything that you are dealing with that is coming up that's dealing with that issues when it comes to religion, we're there just to offer that sympathetic ear that's going to offer resources. Basically, I like to describe it as like street epistemology
Yeah.
with emotional support. That is
Nice.
what we're trained to do. We don't, we want people, we trust that the people that are calling in are intelligent, thoughtful people, and we're just trying to guide them through those questions so it
Yeah.
doesn't feel so overwhelming, and to know that other people go through this too. We have an online community that you can be invited to. So like, let's say you're a Jehovah's Witness and you want to connect with other Jehovah's Witnesses that are going through the process or have gone through the process, we can offer that. And we offer all kinds of different um, groups that can offer support on, from people that just got connected with the online community. We also have several online groups. So if you go to Meetup, you can find a recovering from religion support group. I do the virtual support chapter, which is basically I get anyone. Um, it is a hodgepodge of different people from all over the world. But we have, like, let's say you live in Philadelphia, or you live in New York, or you live in Australia, and you're trying to find a virtual support group, you would just go there and connect with that group. But this also works really well because this is online. Like, let's say you don't live in Philadelphia, but the time works for you, you can join that virtual group.
Yeah.
So, and that's another way for you to get support, and talking through those issues when dealing with doubt and non-belief and those sort of things. So we offer that as well. So we have a bunch of different resources. We have a bunch of resources online. Please go to our resource page. We have a bunch of stuff on there. And you can, and also too, like, let's say, you want to chat with an agent, but you need a specific time, either due to privacy or work or whatever it is, you can schedule a chat too, and an agent will contact you. So we have a bunch of different things for you to get in contact with us and get the support and help that you need.
Yeah, it's a really great organization. I know a lot of times I've been on one of the atheist call-in shows, and you got people that call in asking for advice on how to deal with family members that aren't accepting of who they are, and Recovering from Religion is always one of the first organizations I think of for that, because I'm not trained for that.
And I also want to point out too, we are not therapists.
No.
We are not trained psychologists. Basically, we're just well trained to listen and offer support and a empathetic ear and offer resources. But if you do need professional psychological help, we are connected with the Secular Therapy Project. And that you can get science-based psychological care, and they will help connect you with a trained therapist that will give you the type of psychological care that you actually need. But that's only, like, we find that's only a small percentage of people that connect to us. Most people are just dealing with that normal thing you deal when you're coming out of religion, or, you're coming up against like contradictory beliefs, or you're in one religion and then you get exposed to another religion, you start to figure out like which one is right, that type of stuff, and they just need a little help along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So back to the Reproductive Rights Task Force. So what would a pregnant person need to do? Like, they call you guys, and then you guys kind of point them in the direction of resources that they have available to them in their state?
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal, and this is an ongoing process, and we're definitely trying to fine tune it, because this has only been going on for like a few weeks now since our Roe v. Wade got turned over. So we're definitely in the process of gathering resources and also training our agents and getting them, emotionally prepared to deal with these types of influx of calls. We haven't seen a huge influx, but we definitely know that this is an issue that people talk about, and we were talking about it before the Supreme Court decision, and we know that an abortion is a emotional topic for a lot of people. And for just to talk a little bit about this, with our agents, we want to be able for them to offer that advice without feeling like they have to kind of pull back a little bit and not be reactionary. And also that we also support our agents if they do feel triggered and they feel that they can't offer the best support, that they have the option to be like, you know what, I can't discuss this with you. I'm not going to be a good supportive person. And they can hand it over to another agent or reschedule the call and stuff like that too. So if you do find yourself contacting us and you get an agent and you start talking about this topic and they do need to pull back, it is not you. It's just because this particular topic is very emotional for all of us, and we're human beings. And we get emotional. I wouldn't be out here, being an ambassador talking about this issue and getting people aware and offering resources if I did not care. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this really kind of shows how like the Christian fundamentalism is taking roots, and like they've been at this for a long time. Like they've been playing the long game with this, and I don't know. I guess now they've got the Supreme Court. I'm very pessimistic about where the states is at. It was like, I don't know. Maybe you've got some insight in this, but the way I see it is like the Supreme Court is now basically locked in here for probably the next 40 years, unless a president decides to expand it, which has been done in the past, but I don't really think Biden's going to go in that direction.
Oh God, I don't. No, Grandpa, it is. Presidential Grandpa is not going to be fighting against this.
I'm sorry, my cat's destroying my office.
I don't think. I mean, like, and like, I'm not saying Biden's a bad person, but I don't think that this particular issue he's really concerned about. I feel like
he is Catholic, so like even though he is technically pro-choice, he's still Catholic, and that probably affects.
And like, he was handed a lot of shit coming out of 2020, so I understand that this may not be like the most important thing on his plate. Do I think it's bullshit and I think that he should care? Yes, but I can understand that, his head might not be completely in the game. I can accept that.
Yeah. And like
regardless, like I live in Florida.
Oh.
And we just had an election yesterday and a lot of people voted red. So, and the way that living here and seeing the way the politics roll, the country will follow, because unfortunately with the way the things are going, that the squeaky wheel is getting the oil, it's getting all the attention. And those of us on the left, we're really good at pointing out problems, but getting us together is like herding cats. So
I actually, this is kind of a talking point that I hear all the time, is that like, oh well, the Republicans might have horrible goals, but they all vote in lockstep to do it. And my thinking there is that, well, that's because, like, politically speaking, they're conservative. It's much easier to be conservative than it is to be progressive, because all you have to do to be conservative is when someone proposes something new, just say no. You don't have to argue about how to say no. You don't have to argue about the best way to say no to this new legislation. You just have to say no. So they can all vote no, because that's progress. We don't want progress. We want to conserve. Whereas on the progressive end of things is just like, there's so many different ways. Like, what's the best way to fix the American voting system? Like, well, we need to tackle gerrymandering. We need to, like, maybe ranked choice voting. We need to have more than two parties. Like, there's so many different ways you can do it, and it's just not practical to do it all at the same time. So it, like, you get these different factions arguing over which one is the most important, which one should be done first. So it's much easier to just say no to everything than to propose solutions. And so that's why, like, it seems like the Democrats are not progressing, and they are definitely not progressing as fast as most progressives want them to. But I think the fact of the matter is, like, in the 2020 election, the Democratic candidates that were on the stage with Biden pushed him further left. He saw how many votes that Bernie got, and he now knows he has to he has to accommodate some of those
Yeah.
more and try to be more progressive. And like his first week in office, he signed a bunch of progressive, like fairly progressive EOs that nobody thought he would, like nobody thought that he was going to be that progressive. Yeah, he has not been perfect. He's been pretty bad, if we're honest. But he was a lot better than he could have been, and that's specifically because of how the primaries went with people, because that's as close as you got to ranked choice voting on a national level right now, is just show the people how much you like the progressive candidates by voting for them in the primaries and in the midterms as well.
Yeah, because like I know this past election I voted for pretty much any progressive that was on the ballot, and then if you're a Republican, I was just, because a lot of is just Republicans running against Republicans in this state, and I just didn't vote for them because I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to take the lesser of two evils if both the evils suck. So I was just like, skip, but I remember when I was younger, when we've always been divided, but I don't think it's been as vitriolic as it has been the past 6 years. I had my blinders on. I was not paying attention. I was just like, it's fine. Like I got very comfortable when Obama was president. I got super comfy. I was just like, we're fine. He's not the best, but he's kind of progressive. He's kind of cool. Like I have a job. The economy's good. I'm fine. And then I didn't really realize how much politics really did shape us as a nation, and definitely with these new policies that are coming out and all these different things that are happening. And I also think that we have so much access to so much information now that before I wasn't as politically literate as I am now. And I think it's just because, one, I was doom scrolling between 2015 and 2020 every day. Like, oh fuck, what do you do? Like, oh god.
And then but also in 2020, you're stuck at home in the lockdowns. What else are you going to do but read the news?
Right, it's doom scroll. But also the flip side of that too, it forced me to become more politically literate. How are things voted on? How does each governmental structure work beyond what I learned in civics class, and how we vote for policies and how, grassroots organizations kind of come together and things like that. I wasn't paying attention to that stuff before. I just didn't, I was just kind of like, But then, we got, the orange shit given. So it was like, okay, well, I cannot not pay attention. So I got more actively involved. And this kind of ties into why, because I joined Recovering from Religion during the pandemic. I started out going to the ACA Discord, and I started meeting people that were actively involved. And then that transitioned into me joining Recovering from Religion. And because I know that a lot of us don't have a lot of power. Like I don't have much money, I work a 9 to 5, but one thing I do have is my voice. And if I can just get a couple people to critically think about some things, look at the world from a broader perspective, I feel like I'm doing something, with my voice and my ability to direct people to us, because one thing religion tells you that what you should think, we want to help you how to think. Because we know most people are intelligent, thoughtful people that don't really just want to take care of their families and go to work and be good people, but they've just been indoctrinated into bullshit. And we know, because of what's been going on, when you look at what's happening, where people are screaming about critical race theory at school board meetings, and you're just like, okay, well, somebody forgot how to critically think. Didn't learn this. You gotta help people along that way, and it starts with just second guessing what you've been told.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I kind of get I understand the feeling of disillusionment with the system, but it's still pretty important to participate, even if you don't, even if the options aren't perfect.
Right. Like, I kind of equate it to like I'm not a big fan of capitalism the way it is set up right now, but I have to participate in the system because what else am I going to do? Like, not eat? Like, I have to buy groceries, like we are part of the system, but you can educate yourself on ethical companies and choose where your money goes. That's one thing you can do, even though you're locked into a certain system,
Yeah.
and it takes work though. And like, I'm lazy. I want to be lazy, I don't want to have to like do extra work, but you got to. And honestly, like, we're now in the internet age where everything is at your fingertips. So even when people are like, this is too hard, I'm like, dude, you have Google like in your phone. You can look this shit up. So I don't have a lot of, and I'm a lazy person, but when information is right there, it's very easy to look things up. And everything's widely available, like bills that are being introduced in Congress and all those things are available to you, and you can read those things. You just got to do the legwork.
Okay, I don't know if this person in the chat is a troll, but someone just popped in and said, Godseed says, I hate socialism. And
okay.
So the fun fact here is that there are degrees.
Then I hope you're not paying. I hope you don't plan on collecting Social Security when you get older, because guess what? That's socialism.
That's the thing, is there are degrees of, so like I don't think anyone's advocating for pure socialism or pure capitalism or pure anything, because that's not possible. But like,
a hybrid system would be wonderful.
If you drive on a road, that's technically socialism because that was paid for socially. Like, that's what socialism is. It's when we get together and we socially pay for certain things that we agree that we all need. Roads are one of those things. Up here in Canada, doctor's appointments are one of those things.
Yeah, you know how jealous I am that you guys have socialized healthcare, and I do know that every system has its problems, but when I kind of feel that if I like
let me talk to you about mental health. So I have a great system. This might be complaining to the wrong people here, but like, so for mental health, you basically get 6 appointments with a therapist covered, and then if they can't fix your brain permanently in those 6 appointments, you need to pay for it.
Right. So there's definitely tweaks that need to be made and stuff like that. But like, 2 fundamental human rights are education and healthcare. Everybody should have access to those things, and that includes mental health. So, and I feel like if you want to have your citizens of your country to advance and become progressive and like be competitive in the global marketplace and, contribute to the economy and all those different things, you want them healthy and you want them educated. And a good way to do that is to fund taxpayer money into those systems. And then the rest is kind of like, if you want to make shoes, you can make shoes to make money off of that, and I think a hybrid system would work. I know I'm crazy.
I mean, it already is a hybrid system. It's just to what degree.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be worked out on the details, but I think those 2 basic human things are just what everybody deserves and needs just as a human being, but, but like this all ties back to what's going on, because the conservatives are now in charge and they want a purely capitalistic system, and they want basically anyone with a uterus to be a broodmare.
Yeah, I don't even understand the opposition to abortion. Like I get it. I get it at a certain point. Like 3rd trimester, when the brain starts developing and you can actually like read brain waves and stuff like that. But like, to bring it back around to my wife, she was on life support. She was still technically alive. Her body was still alive after she had been declared dead. And like they kept her on life support for a few days so that like her family from Montreal could come down and say goodbye and stuff. But like, she had more brain activity when she was declared dead, and it was then okay for us to decide to take her off of life support, than a fetus approaching the 3rd trimester. So why does the fetus approaching the 3rd trimester get more consideration when it has less capacity for thought and feeling than my wife did at that point?
Well, I mean, like, also, you have more rights as a corpse. If you're an organ donor in the United States, like you
Yeah.
have to
No.
explicitly state,
Yes,
you can take and
wife,
I'm dead.
My wife right
makes
now
no
in the
sense.
ground has more bodily autonomy than some women do in some states.
Mhm.
And she was an organ donor,
And-
so if you're not, I
Yeah.
highly recommend being an organ donor. Because there are 4 people that are alive right now that wouldn't be if she wasn't. Or like.
And that's the thing that I think that's so frustrating, is that I don't think people, and this comes down to the emotional language that is used, because they're like, oh, you're killing babies, and like when I think of someone killing a baby, I'm thinking you like killing like a 2-month-old or whatever, or my friend's, I call her my niece, and she's like a year old. Like that's where your brain goes to. You're not thinking about a clump of cells within the uterine wall that has no capacity to grow, to change, to develop, go through the milestones. It's just like, and I'm like, listen, y'all need to stop using that language, because they're not babies.
Yeah, well, they do that on purpose, because like I a while ago I responded to a video. I think it was on the YouTube channel What Would You Say, and it wasn't specifically on abortion, or no, it was, but there was another video that I saw before that where they were talking about doing scientific experiments with leftover IVF embryos.
Yeah,
and they had drawn an image of these embryos as like fully developed babies wrapped in a swaddling cloth with a pacifier in a test tube. And it's like, no, they're not allowed to do anything on these embryos. Like when they get to 14 days, they have to get rid of them. This is a 14, like you need a microscope to even see the bloody thing. Like it's not a baby.
And I think that's the thing, that's because like I understand, I'm a mother, I have 2 kids, and and then after I had my son, I shut myself down for business because I decided I did not want to have any more children. I was allowed to make that choice for myself. I'm like, I am shutting down. Got my tube side, because that was a choice I was allowed to make about my own body and what I wanted for my life.
And it's such an empowering choice. I had a vasectomy myself, and that's one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. And I like before I had it, my wife and I had a bit of a disagreement. She wanted a 4th child, and I did not. And we eventually came into agreement on that. And I don't think like she definitely wouldn't have ever done anything to like trick me into getting her pregnant or anything like that. But mistakes happen. Like our 3rd child, we were planning on having a 3rd child, but he came earlier than we intended. Because an IUD didn't work. So like these methods aren't necessarily 100%. And so it was just empowering to know that like, okay, well, we have agreed that 3 is a good place to stop, but if she accidentally gets pregnant again, she's going to want to keep it. And I have no right to tell her to term, because the choice goes both ways. Pro-choice goes both ways. If she's pregnant, I am not the person who has that body. It's not within my purview to say, no, you need to go abort that. So just having that, like just knowing that it was my choice to not be fertile anymore. And for me, even like I don't even have to carry the child to term. I have it easy.
Yeah.
No matter what, I get the easy end of the stick here. And for the person who has the easy end of the stick, it's just empowering to like have that choice for yourself. So like the person that actually does have to carry the child, it's so much bigger of a deal.
And like keep in mind, only 18% of people in the United States actually want like a complete ban on all abortions, or even within cases of rape and incest, which is basically something has to happen to you for you to get that right. You have to go through a violation, when really it just comes down to which feeds into misogyny, 1, and 2, that it feeds into this idea that women are supposed to be victims and our bodies are subject to other people, and we cannot know our own minds, we cannot know our own bodies, we cannot know our ability to make decisions. That's what all this is. We're talking about abortion, but really this boils back to misogyny and toxic masculinity. That's basically the conversation that we're having, and people wrap it up in it. They wrap it up in religion. They wrap it up in being pro-life and all these different arguments. But really, we're talking about real issues that affect people of all genders.
Well, if you look back at the religious landscape before Roe versus Wade, it was the only religion that was concerned with it were the Catholics. Mm-hmm. The evangelicals actually supported Roe versus Wade. Some of the groups, like, they actually came out and officially supported the decision. They had different levels of support, and it wasn't all like unanimous. It wasn't like enthusiastic support, but like the Southern Baptist Convention actually like put out an official statement where they said, yeah, no, it's fine.
I am gonna plug another person. Renegade Cut did a 3-part video series on the specific topic about the history of Roe versus Wade, bodily autonomy, all these different things within this particular topic that I highly recommend that people watch if you want to become more educated, because I am definitely missing some finer points here. I'm doing my best, but he really broke it down in a way that is a way for you to really understand the history behind this and why it's happening now. Yeah. I think what I'm so frustrated about, like, especially the toxic masculinity angle really bothers me, because men are affected by this too, and they just think like, well, it's fine. And I'm like, you're going to be locked in child support payments that you don't want to pay if you have like a one night stand, and think if you knock somebody up,
there was,
but nobody's screamed about vasectomies.
There's already been a state that has said that they're going to offer the tax tax benefits that you get for having a kid. They're going to offer that starting from the first week of pregnancy. Yeah, moment of conception or whatever. I don't know how they would calculate. Like, do they just go by the doctor's guess? Because the doctors don't go by when the actual conception happened. It's like the first day of the last period, which is not conception day. But anyway, but like that's so in that case, and as like with, I think it is Georgia, and I think in Georgia you can still get an abortion up to 6 weeks. Don't quote me on that. Go check the
I'll be able to tell you. I have notes.
But yeah, if it is Georgia, if I'm right about this, what you could do, like, if
Georgia's 20 to 22 weeks.
Yeah. So if you and the child tax benefit that they have there, it's prorated. So if you have a kid for one day of the year, you get the tax benefit as if you had the kid for the whole year. So you said it was, how long did you say they had in Georgia? 6 weeks?
20 to 22 weeks. But that was the notes that I have are from a few weeks ago. I don't know what if any trigger laws have gone into effect for that state, but as the notes that I had right now. But I wouldn't be surprised, because it's Georgia.
I might be wrong about what state did this for the tax benefit as well. In theory now you could get pregnant on the last day of the year, get an abortion on the first day of the new year, and have a tax cut for as if you had a kid for that whole year. I mean, obviously that exact scenario would not be very, because I imagine actually that brings up another question. How would you prove that you had the pregnancy? Like, would you need to show a positive pregnancy test as part of doing your taxes?
Yeah, that is because, like, you can claim you're dependent because usually your children have a social security number when they're born. Like, you get it when you're in the hospital. They're like, okay, you had a kid, we're gonna put them on the registry, give you a social security number, and by the time you leave the hospital, they're part of the system. Yeah, that's why. And I don't know how you would do that for like are you gonna give a club of cells a social security number? Like this whole thing is so fucking ridiculous. Like, no matter how you look at it, it's just stupid.
And like every year, just like, instead of using birth control, just use Plan B every time and get a tax break every year.
Right. Oh my God, you get pregnant like in March, and then like you claim the kid, and then you do like plan B like, you know, a week later, and be like, no, I get tax like I get the tax break.
Yeah, no, like that sort of that literally financially incentivizes people to get abortions. It's like, well, I was pregnant enough that I can show that I was pregnant, so I get a tax break. So now let's go get that abortion.
Right. Oh, I think that like I would imagine that you would have to like go to like your OBGYN and get like a like, oh yeah, we detected like a heartbeat, you know, and then be like, okay, you know, and then be like, all right, I got the doctor's note. You know,
Well,
please give me my money.
also, I don't know if it's the same in the States, but in Canada, the government basically just kind of trusts that you did the tax thing correctly, and unless there's like something you did really wrong that throws up red flags, you're generally okay, and then you don't have to
That's
show
how
any
it
actual
is here
documents without an
usually.
audit. Yeah, so I could see people doing that, and you like not necessarily having supporting documentation, but like if you do it every year, that might start to be.
I mean, they're gonna put up some red flags.
But still, I mean, if it's technically legal, don't take legal advice from this live stream.
Yeah, please don't. We are not
Technically
lawyers. So please don't. You can't say it like I heard VR and Helen say it on a live stream.
Oh,
But
are you a Star Wars fan? Because somebody just said in the chat OBG Kenobi, and that made me chuckle.
That's awesome. It is, but like this is the weird thing on like even on the legal side. Like I would not want to be a constitutional lawyer right now.
No,
Dealing,
it's
you
a
know,
hellscape.
because dealing with all this crap is probably a nightmare. Because again, like let's say I live in Florida, but let's say I'm in Alabama, okay, and there's been a ban on abortion, and in Florida right now, you can get an abortion at 15 weeks. So at 12 weeks, I decide I live in Alabama and I've traveled to Florida to get an abortion. Okay, it's legal here, but not in Alabama. And we don't have, and the thing is though, is that we don't have sovereign states. Like you can travel in between states and nobody questions you. So I'm like, you know, I have to have a passport to go from here to Alabama. You know,
Yeah.
like even going to Canada is relatively easy. You know, I did a lot of traveling to Canada when I was younger because my mom's from Quebec and I grew up in New Hampshire, so we did a lot of traveling back and forth. But it was relatively easy to be like, here, you know, here's our passport. You know, that was it. But like now, it's like, are you going to question every single woman that's going into another state? Like, why are you going to state? You know, and like want another medical history, you know, and have to present that.
Well, that's why people are saying to delete your period tracking apps, because like there's already been that case of the girl who, because she discussed having an abortion with her mother on Facebook. Is that one resolved yet? How do we know the outcome of that case?
I am not sure on that one.
So I'm not
Is
gonna
it still in legislation?
I'm not sure if they're still looking. I think there might have been an outcome. We got someone in the chat is okay. I think this might be that same person from before. He says artificial wombs make this whole abortion argument moot. That's why I've invested in artificial womb tech. I'm not aware of any successful artificial wombs out there, but hypothetically, let's say an artificial womb exists and you can pull out a newly fertilized egg, stick it in this artificial womb, and grow a perfectly healthy baby from that. Many questions are raised up here. First off, that's still an invasive procedure on the person who is pregnant, so that's still a bodily autonomy issue. If they can have a non-invasive, just take a pill and it's taken care of, versus that probably would have to be at least microsurgery. Like there's two very different procedures there. But then also, this raises the question, now who is responsible for that kid that's grown in the artificial womb? Like, is this just a kid that's
It's a
going to be
product of
stuck
the state?
straight into the foster care system? Like, that is not a good idea at all.
And that's the thing I don't like. And like, I'm from the mind that the Supreme Court knows exactly what they're doing, because this is affecting lower class people and people of color the most. This is not people that have some upward mobility, you know, can afford to travel to another state and get an abortion. They can do these things. But there are other people that, like, for example, like, let's say this had happened when I got pregnant with my son, which was not planned. and I found out I was pregnant with him at 11 weeks. Let's say I was living in a state where abortions were banned at 6.
Yeah.
I'm screwed. And if I wasn't financially stable at the time that I got pregnant with him, I would have, and I was not really happy when I did it, because I just finished some schooling and I was looking forward to getting into some little bit of a career, at the time, even because my oldest was getting into preschool age and we were making some, financial decisions. This is just my story. Okay. This is just one story of things that you have to adjust to when a new child shows up and you get pregnant. Okay. But the thing is, though, is that this isn't about babies. This is about forcing people into a situation where they have to give birth. And then they can vilify them for not being able to take care of their child and all these different things, even though they don't want to do anything for affordable housing, getting training into education, investing into healthcare, all the things you would need to do to take care of children.
It's an unequivocal fact that women women being able to have control over their own bodies and have control over their own reproduction has made their lives objectively better. It's made society objectively better. And the only reason for this would be to, if you want women to be subjugated again and get them out of the workforce because now they have to take care of a baby, and we're not gonna pay for childcare, so you either have to get a second job, and childcare is essentially that entire job salary going straight to childcare, or stay home and stay out of the workforce. So it's just, I don't know. There's a lot of issues with that. And this goes this is a form of, locking people into a form of slavery, and they can't do it legally. We got rid of slavery. We decided that was bad. But they have to do it through other means to force people into situations where they cannot enter the workforce. They can't have upward mobility. They can't get a thing with education, because you're locked into a system where you are forced to not participate in the American economy, not have any upward mobility, and no access to education, affordable, all those things that you need. You are forced into this role. And fuck you and fuck your child, because if it was about kids, they'd be investing money into education, they'd be investing money into healthcare, they'd be investing money into housing, they'd be investing money into different infrastructure so people could actually thrive. That's not happening. And also there'd be a bunch of people rallying and yelling at men saying, why aren't you getting vasectomies, man? This is the conversations that we would be having. This is forcing, those of us that have uteruses into a second class citizen position, because they're taking this attitude that the only purpose that we're supposed to have is to breed. Yeah.
And that's the most, because they're also talking about taking, basic contraception away.
Yeah, I think there's already some bills on the table to ban IUDs. Yeah. It's come on.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. And they say they're trying to preserve life and all this type of stuff. And I'm just no, you just want us to be broodmares, and you don't trust our ability to make our own decisions. Can we call a spade a spade?
Yeah, if you're trying to preserve life, then pay for the stuff that happens when the kid's actually alive. Or at least do something to help with that stuff. It's so hard to have kids. Kids are just difficult.
Yeah, they are.
Very rewarding, but it's my opinion that every child should be a wanted child. And that's best for the parents, and it's best for the kids.
And also, too, I am sure that, I love my kids, and I'm very proud of the people that they've grown into. I have one that's 21 and one that's 18. I am very proud of the people they turned out to. But I can remember several times when they were growing up that I was fuck. I'm why did I procreate? Why did I do this to myself? To be honest, because I'm a human being and kids can be shitty. They can be shitty, and I love them, and I'm very happy I had them, but there were certain times that I was just like, kids are shitty, why did I procreate? And I wanted my kids.
There was a screaming match today about who got to sit in which spot on the couch.
See?
Like, just sit your ass down, it's a couch. They're all comfortable.
Or like, you don't want to wear pants. You're trying to get out of the house, and they did the dead weight on the floor.
I understand. I at least understand that one.
Yeah. Like, that I get, but it's like, okay, but like, you have to go to school, you have to wear pants. Like,
yeah.
You know, and I think that, you know, and I'm a person, you know, we are both people that wanted our children, and it's rewarding, and we're very grateful, but we also know
it's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone. I know people that have had children and they should have never had children. I'm like, you are not parenting material. Sorry. You know.
Josh Brown says, honestly, saying you don't want to raise kids should be more normalized. Kids are way too much work. Yeah. That's absolutely true. Like, if someone does not want children, they should not have children. I don't see why that's a controversial issue.
I want the people to not have, that don't want to have kids, not to have kids. I have friends that never want children. I think they're fine. They're still wonderful people, and I'm friends with them, and they're like, you know, you had kids, great, it's on my back. And I'm like, that's fine, don't have kids, I don't care, the world's overpopulated anyway, it's fine.
Also, I said Josh Brown, it's actually John Brown. My bad. I saw the JB initials, and I initially went to Joshua Bowen, and so I kind of portmanteaued the two names together.
Well, no, that's Daniel Brown. I'm thinking of the guy that wrote the Da Vinci Code. That's Dan Brown.
I don't like the Da Vinci Code.
You know what? That was one of the books I read that started my deconversion process as a Catholic. Even though it was complete fiction, but it got me thinking about how religion is told differently through the ages, even though it was complete fiction, but it got me thinking about religion in the historical context differently. And then as things went around, I realized that Dan Brown had made a lot of this shit up. Yeah. But it got me into that mindset that like history is different than what's presented now. And that was like one of my first steps into that process. Fucking weird.
I had kind of the opposite experience where before I read the book, I had heard, like, I was an evangelical, and I had heard that like people were saying that this book blows Christianity out of the water and stuff like that. And so I read the book kind of like looking for that, and then like as I'm reading, I'm like, no, this is like, who cares what Da Vinci said about Jesus? Like, that guy lived like 1600 years after him. What does that matter? Meanwhile, the Gospels were written some 30 years after he died, so it's not 1600 years, but it's not an eyewitness.
Well, the closer you are to the event, that's closer how you get to eyewitnesses versus 30 years versus 1600.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, speaking historically, that actually is pretty good for a historical document to get like something that was written that close to the actual events that it's trying to describe. However, the Gospels are not written as history, like they're not the history genre.
No, and they contradict each other. I mean, that's another conversation we could have, but we know, like we did the homework, we know. But it is really funny, like, even like, but kind of tie that into the conversation that we're having about this particular topic, the history of abortion and the way that it was seen in the country before Roe v. Wade was a thing. People were still having abortions, you know, it was just back alley. And you know, there were physicians that were giving it to patients under the table. You know, it was still happening. You know, we were just like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do that, because it is a privacy issue. And sorry, this is my ADHD brain working, but I'm starting to think, because they use the privacy clause as a reason why to turn this over, I'm wondering if that's going to lead to other precedent, not only in privacy rights, but not only on like social issues, but also in privacy issues, just basic healthcare,
Yeah.
income, things that you have going on in your everyday life that have nothing to do with social issues. Just you as a non-autonomous human being that they're going to start looking into, and how you're contributing to this capitalistic system. I don't think people are thinking about like long-term consequences of this fucking decision. Like, I really
Yeah.
don't think, because this is not just an abortion issue. This is a societal thing that they're setting the precedent for.
I know this point has been done to death, but I still find it amusing that in Clarence Thomas's opinion on this piece, he like listed out all the pieces of, or all the decisions that they're going to come after next, and just left the interracial marriage one off the table, even though that one was decided on the exact same basis.
Well, because he's in an interracial marriage, and
Yeah.
it's only when it affects them.
What can I get out of it? Like,
Right.
well, it's just like
but
that.
he is on record that he wanted to make lives for liberals as miserable as possible. So
That sounds about right.
he is on record of saying that. So, and the thing is though, but like, I kind of know a little bit of his history, and he, during the racist 60s and 70s and like law school, and he was going to college and all these different things, he was heavily prejudiced against in liberal institutions. So I kind of understand why he's an ass, but at the same time, I'm like, you're kind of working against your own interests now, because we've moved beyond that. And I think that's I think that's what's also very frustrating to me. Like for example, Amy Coney Barrett is a Catholic. She's on the Supreme Court. Thank you, Trump. and she's a woman. And because of that internalized misogyny that she's been told based on her religion, and she has to follow this man-dominated field, and for her to have even a little bit of power, she has to go along with this, and I don't think, and she, on a certain level, she has to know she's working against her own interests. Like, you don't live in a society and not know that you're kind of working against the thing that is supposed to help you, that got you, the systems that got you where you were, is because we were like, hey, you know what, women can do shit too. And that's why you're on the Supreme Court.
Yep.
And even though Trump nominated her, but she had been in law, she had done the work. He just didn't pluck her off the street, and I don't agree with her politics, but she's a fellow human being, and she's been indoctrinated into the system that for her to have any sort of power, for her to have a voice, she has to play the man's game.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's so frustrating to me. And, and when Ginsburg it's like, no, don't play the man's game, play your own game. And for her to kind of push against that legacy is, I think, the thing that's very frustrating for me, because I just see a fellow human being that fell in for the bullshit.
Yeah, it's always this weird mix of like pity for how indoctrinated you are with hatred for how evil you're being, sort of thing. And like, it just gets to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, you were indoctrinated, but like, there's no excuse at this point. Like, I don't, like, she's part of a sector of Catholicism that's a bit more extreme than mainstream Catholicism. But like, she has to have had some experiences outside of that in order to get to a point in life where she can even be nominated as a Supreme Court justice. So like, she has enough life experience that she should be able to question that. So it's like, yes, I feel pity for your indoctrination, but you're still responsible for your own actions.
Yeah, I like as I said, I have that pity for her as a fellow human being, as a fellow woman. Like, I get it, because I've had to play those games too, and I just decided after a while that I don't want to play this fucking game anymore. That's fine. I get it though, because I grew up Catholic. But I grew up traditional Catholic, and my parents were not very strict about it. You know, it was just a moral system that I grew up in and stuff. That's why I never went through like an angry atheist phase or anything. I was just kind of like, oh, it's all bullshit. And, you know, like that's kind of how I did it. But I think for her, and we know this too, when you're that far in, when you're that deep in, any doubt, any ability to say this is bullshit, I'm working against my own interests, is giving up any sort of momentum or any sort of clout or recognition that you have. Because for her to balk the system now, even if she wanted to, she wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
know?
mean, she's on the Supreme Court, so she could, absolutely, right?
Yeah, I know she has a lot of power now.
It's not like you can do anything about a Supreme Court justice, otherwise Clarence Thomas would have been impeached ages ago.
True. That is true.
So she can do what she wants now.
Well, and you can, like, if she's interpreting the law, she can just go, oh, you know what? This says this, and based on, you know, precedent or whatever, she can do the complete opposite of, you know, what she has been promised to do, but she can just use the law as an excuse, which is very convenient. I would do that.
I just remembered something that I wanted to break in and say earlier, but forgot about, because two ADHD people on stream again. These always go so smoothly when that happens. So when you said that I wouldn't want to be a lawyer now, the first thing that popped into my mind is like, yeah, because now, or constitutional lawyer specifically, it was like, yeah, because now in order to interpret the Constitution, apparently you have to go back to 1300s European common law in order to figure out whether this is part of our heritage when you're doing your interpreting.
Where it was okay to beat your wife with a switch that was no bigger, like as long as it was smaller than your thumb. Those are the laws we're dealing with. Like, well, okay.
The best part about that is when he was talking about gun regulations, like he actually brought up a law from that time period, and when it went back to before the invention of the gun, they started counting knives and swords and things as the equivalent, and he actually like had to explain why this one time when the king actually did outlaw knives in London, that didn't count. And it's just wild.
It's absurd.
I don't know if you know the podcast Opening Arguments with P. Andrew Torres.
No, I'm not familiar with them.
It's a really good legal podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an episode where he talked about that decision and how ridiculous it is that he's going back to these ancient laws, and then like nobody's going to check other ancient law. Well, for the most part, nobody's going to check other ancient laws. So he could have just not mentioned that time when knives were illegal in London. But he still mentioned it and had to explain it away. And just as a reminder to everyone in the chat, this is a fundraiser for Recovering from Religion, so feel free to donate. We're at $110. I put a $2,000 goal. I just
we are a 501c3 charity.
I just kind of pulled that number out of my butt. So
so all the money will go to our programs and what we offer to people. Like I'm making all the atheist money right now. Like I'm making it rain, man. All the atheist money.
So I actually bought one share in the company Pfizer specifically, and I'm waiting for the dividend to pay out, so that when I get that dividend, I can take a screenshot of the 1 cent that they sent me and be like, yeah, so all the people that accused me of being on the payroll of Pfizer when I made my vaccine video, I am. See, look at all the money they're paying me.
But you know what? What's really interesting, like we've been because we've been on several different tangents in this conversation because it triggers so many different. Welcome to ADHD land, people. This is how it looks, but. Because this issue, we started talking about abortion, we're talking about legality, we're talking about money, we're talking about social issues, we're talking about interracial marriage, we're talking about misogyny, like everything flows back to the other, because we're dealing with religious indoctrination and what it does to people's brains, and they do stupid shit. They do things that affect people, like not even just secular people. Like there is court cases right now being presented in the States by people part of the Jewish tradition, because they consider life happened at the first breath. They don't consider what's going on in the womb a person.
That's what the
so
Bible
it's going
says.
against their religious teachings, which is and we're part of the establishment clause, which goes against the Constitution. So, and they have a case.
Yeah, well, that's what the Bible actually teaches. When you now the Bible doesn't say it quite so explicitly; it's kind of an implication. But there are other Jewish writings about those verses in the Bible that, like, historically, that is exactly what they how they view it, and like, so like that's like they should be covered under RFRA, right?
Yeah, that would. It would seem so.
Because RFRA is basically the law that became, as long as I sincerely believe it and call it religious, it's okay. But actually, no, it seems to be more like, as long as I sincerely believe it and call it a part of Christianity, it's okay. Because as soon as the Jewish people disagree with the Christians, suddenly the Judeo part of Judeo-Christian values gets forgotten about.
I wonder if they're going to like self-supporting Israel and all these different things when they, go against the Christian president that we're setting in this country, because that's where we're also looking at too. These are going to have long-term political consequences, and nobody's kind of concerned about those things. But if people don't feel supported and they don't feel like they're part of the democratic process, you're going to get pushback, and you're going to get people that aren't going to feel supported, and it's going to become hostile and weird, because that's what human beings do. I'm not a violent person, I don't think violence is the answer, but I'm fucking pissed, man. Like, I'm angry, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting to feel like a second-class citizen, and we are setting, and we all know, like, this is something that's happening now, but if we don't do the work to make it change, there's going to be generational trauma and all the shit that comes after that, because that's what happens, because we have long memories, and we don't want to see our children, the people that go forward, to we don't want to take 10 step backwards anymore. We want to progress. Listen, I'm like, you can worship God, you can worship Allah, you can worship Bob the Wonder Toast. I don't really care. I don't care. But like, you can have your church. There's churches everywhere. There's a church I can walk to from my house. I don't care. But like, let everybody be able to make their own decisions for their own lives. That's all I want. I'm not asking for a lot.
Yeah, and it bears mentioning again that pro-choice is not the same as pro-abortion. It's about the choice. Like, if someone wants to keep their pregnancy and keep the child, they should have that choice as well.
That's all it is. Yeah. And also too, if like, I'm going to also kind of bring up this point that when it comes to adoption, a lot of agencies in the United States are Christian run when it comes to adoption. And also you have to be of a certain age. Sometimes you have to be of a certain color.
A certain religion.
Certain economic status.
There was an atheist couple that was denied an adoption because they were atheist.
Right. So, when you hear people say, like, what about adoption? There's a lot of roadblocks. For example, my brother, him and his ex-wife adopted their son in their 40s from Guatemala because they could, even though they were both Catholic and in their 40s, and he is a civil engineer and she is a professor at Yale. Could not adopt because of their age. Had to go adopt my nephew from Guatemala. Because the abortion laws are more flexible there.
Adopting a baby is not the same as like going out to buy a bag of milk. Oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
In Canada, we get our milk in bags. I know you guys do jugs or something.
I know. I've seen your bag milk. Like, when I was a kid, it was weird. Like, when I would go up to Montreal and visit family at the bag milk. And then now it's not so weird, but now it's weird. I was like, why's your milk in a bag? Weird.
I'm not sure whether I like the bag milk or the jug milk better. I'd have to look into, because as far as environmentally is concerned, I know most places are not capable of recycling the flimsy bags, but it might just be an instance of, because it uses less plastic overall, than even taking into account the fact that you can't recycle it, it's better. But also there are, like in my region, you can recycle them. Remember,
like way back, they would do it in like the glass jars.
Yeah, that would be best.
That would
was
be
actually,
best, because then you can just keep, because they just reuse them over and over again, you know? So which made more sense economically.
The decline of glass containers for drinks like milk and pop and stuff like that was actually because of oil companies lobbying the government.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Like,
but I'm sorry, that was again ADHD people. welcome to the ADHD stream. Anyway, but like getting back to what we were talking about, that like, these are things that when we're looking on the broad scale of it, when it comes, oh my God, I completely forgot what we were talking about. I was trying to get back on track and I lost it.
Well, I mean,
somebody remind me in the chat.
We could go on another artificial womb tangent, because he's asking if I'm not pro-abortion, then why am I against artificial womb?
Oh, that was we were talking pro-abortion, pro-choice debate. That was what we were talking about.
Well, just to quickly address it, I thought I addressed that before, but it's like extracting a fetus and sticking it in an artificial womb is still a procedure that the pregnant person would have to undergo. So it's still about bodily autonomy. It's still about choice. You don't, like, forcing someone to undergo that procedure is not letting them choose.
And again, like, what do we do with the kid?
Yeah.
Is it a product of the state?
Yeah,
then the state has to take care of it.
We just talked about how hard it is to adopt a baby, even if you have all the relevant qualifications and good income and everything.
So, and so we can't even talk about that. And then also too, like if you're a gay couple and you want to adopt, that's a hurdle and there are plenty of gay people that want to adopt and give kids loving homes, and they cannot just because they have the same genitals. Okay, well, I don't know why that disqualify you from being a parent, but okay.
How many penises are in a household should not be a qualifying factor for whether or not you can adopt
vaginas.
a kid. Yeah. Either or.
Either or. It shouldn't matter. It should come down to, I can understand finances. That's an important thing, because you want to be able to afford, like, you know, food and clothing, and the kid to have their own room and access to education and all that stuff. Like, yes, I agree with that. Okay. But who you sleep with and who you're in love with, no. What your religion is, no, not so much. You know.
Yeah.
Like, you know, where you are health wise, that should be a consideration, you know, but I'm in my 40s and I'm in relatively good health, and I could probably raise another baby. My mama had me when she was 46. You know, there are plenty of people that are older that have young children and they do fine. So, but the adoption agencies don't want to do it because they have those prejudices, you know, in place. And those prejudices are based on things that were like in the 1960s and 70s, where, you know, lifespans were a little bit different. They had a different perception of age and what people were able to do and things like that. Like it was more viable for younger people to have children, where now we recognize that people of all ages have their grandparents raising 5-year-olds. It happens.
My uncle didn't have his first kid until he was in his 50s.
Yeah. Well, look at Clint Eastwood having babies in his 70s. So, you know.
That's a whole... like,
just saying.
I seem to recall something about that, but I feel like that's one of those situations where he's like 70 and she's like 20 something.
Well, it's consenting adults. Yeah, I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. I don't want to I don't want to put, you know, certain, you know, societal expectations onto people, but it does raise the sus flag. Yeah. It just gives you pause. You know, like, I don't care how much money you got.
It's like, I know that half your age plus 7 thing isn't a hard and fast rule.
Like, are you old enough to be my grandpa? No. Like, not doing it.
That's the thing. Like, my daughter is 5 years away from being 18. So it's like, if I date someone who's 18 now, it's like, you're only 5 years older than my daughter. Like, you're the same, you've got the same age difference between my daughter and you as I do between me and my brother. Like, that's just like, I wouldn't be comfortable with that.
I'm like 10 years either way, like 10 years younger or 10 years older. That's like my range of like, because then when we're getting, because my son, like, then we're getting down, like, you're too close to my children's ages, especially now that they're adults.
See,
Like, the line gets weird after that. So I'm like, okay, like, I'm 45. I could like date someone that's 35, or could date someone that's 55. Like, I think that's a good balance.
Yeah.
You know, also too, like, I don't want to date anyone younger than 35 at 45. I don't want to have to train anybody.
That's fair. Yeah, but even then, like, you run into issues when you hit to like a 30-year-old dating a 20-year-old. That's still a little weird. Especially like I like coming from an evangelical church. Like, the youth pastor ended up marrying the pastor's daughter like as soon as she turned 18, and he was in like his late 20s, I think, if I remember right. And that's a fairly common occurrence. And they're the ones, like, they call gay people groomers, but yet,
well,
like,
okay, like, all right, so I'm going to tell you, my CCD teacher, who was a priest, my parents were smart and never let me do spend time with like the clergy outside of church or a like Bible study or a school. Like, I didn't go to like sleepovers or, you know, have any alone time. It was just not something they would do. But when the sex abuse scandal came out, a younger priest that was my CCD teacher ended up committing suicide when all the allegations started coming out. So yeah, so because
you dodged
it's the church. So, well, but
statistically speaking, just with how many we know about,
yeah,
if like pretty much every Catholic priest either is or knows someone that is
diddling
sexually
kids,
abusing kids. Yeah, like that's just a statistical fact at this point.
And it's so, and that's the thing that's so frustrating about this whole thing with the RVWA thing, is that they're trying to hold themselves up as this moral authority. I'm like, you have so many fucking skeletons in your closet. They're out of the closet. We all know, yeah. You know, and you're trying to tell the rest of us how we're supposed to live. And this is supposed to be like God's way and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, dude, like Amy Combat, I'm like, you're part of a church where people were molesting children for centuries. Like, millions of children have been affected by this, and you're holding this up as like this grand standard of like moral rights.
We care about the kids. That's why we're doing it.
Yeah, I'm like,
it's like it looks more like a supply and demand issue when you take that into account.
Right? Exactly. Like
that's not the kind of economics we want.
And yeah, and that's the thing that's so frustrating, because I don't want people that can use, you know, their imaginary friend to justify, you know, certain actions, or pray to their imaginary friend to forgive them for, you know, deplorable, horrible acts, to be making decisions for the basic human being. Like, okay, I have 3 kids. I'm now pregnant again. I'm struggling to take care of the 3 I have. I can't bring this 4th kid into the world and have them suffer. And they're just like, yeah, you have to have this kid, you know, like, it just,
that's such a significant portion of abortions.
How this works.
But that is such a significant portion of abortions, is people that already have kids and can't do another one at this point. And it's like, I have 3 kids, and I can tell you, each one is like, I love all my kids, but each one takes, like, the amount of attention I have to give is finite. And so every additional kid now necessarily takes away something from the other kids. So, like, there comes a point where it's like, you see these families with like 9 kids and stuff. It's like, how much one-on-one time did each of those kids get with their parents? It's like,
or like those quiverful families that have like 15, 20 children. And I'm just like, how do you give any individual attention? Like, your kids are going to grow up fucked up. Like, they cannot not.
Well, oftentimes what happens in those households is that the older kids end up being parents to the younger kids.
Right. And they have no childhood.
Yeah.
You know, it's just taught responsibility over and over again, and like, they can't just be children and just have a normal childhood.
I have my plate full with 3 kids. I can't imagine having 15 kids.
No, I had my handfuls with two. And I'm divorced. It was a co-parent household, but it was still a lot of work. And it was just two. It was just a two.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think people really appreciate that. They just, you know, like I know people even in my own personal life that are pro-life and they love their children and they just think people who choose to have abortions or choose to do any like family planning just don't love children, or they're like, oh, you know, more the better and stuff like that. It's like, no, it's like, because I love myself and I want, if I choose to have children, I want to give them the best life possible. That is why we do this. And then all those mofos talking about like, people that have to have second or third term abortions, it's usually because they're forced into a decision that they have to make. And it's usually because of they're pushed up against a wall. Either the fetus is not viable or they themselves might die. And it comes down to a life choice. And it makes me crazy when people get into debates, because I've fallen into this debate too. And I'm going to kind of put this out also to anyone that's listening. Don't fall into emotional debates where people are like, well, what if the baby's like, at 40 weeks? And do you think the person should be allowed to have an abortion, then make that choice and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, because then you're getting into a debate about semantics. You're not actually talking about the real issue of why someone at 40 weeks would have an abortion. Because if you got into like 38 weeks, 40 weeks, and you have to have an abortion, it is not because you don't want a fucking kid. Because I can tell you, as someone that's had babies, getting to that end, you don't get there easily. Sucks. It sucks.
Maybe they heard one too many times people joke, "Oh, just get this thing out of me," and they thought that meant abortion.
No, and that's not what it is. Like,
it's like I want to see my child already.
And I was not a good pregnant person. I hated being pregnant. Like, I had friends that were all kind of pregnant at the same time, and they love their pregnancies. I'm like, I have a parasite inside me and I want it out. But I love my kids. But getting back to what I was talking about before, we tend to get into debates about semantics and viability and all these different things. That is not the conversation we're having. Basically, when it comes down to brass tacks, we're talking about people, the ability to know their lives and know their own mind and making decisions for themselves based on their own lives and their own mind. And Absolutely. It should be a decision between them and their doctor. Yeah. And that is it. Because you're going to get baited into those conversations. Don't have them.
Significant other can have input, but ultimately it's the decision between the pregnant person and the doctor.
Yeah. I don't want to take anything away from the people that get other people pregnant, because they should have a voice in it, because it is a group decision. But ultimately, it just comes down to the person that actually has to have the fucking child or not. And that's the decision and I know that it's not a great decision. No one, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, thinks abortion is like an all-out good. It's just a necessity of being a human being and being able to make choices for our lives. Like, no, but I haven't met one person that's had an abortion and felt like it was awesome. It was the best experience of their life. It was a lot of emotional hand-wringing and a little bit of trauma and the thing about making that choice. But I haven't met anyone that's regretted it.
So everybody's this is something that I saw on the website that I also wanted to bring up, is that one of the services that you provide or refer people to are for people that have had abortions and are now dealing with the emotions that come along with that, whether that be emotions of like guilt and shame from people outside, or even it's fairly common to go through something similar to postpartum depression after you get an abortion, because your hormones just get messed up at that point. So, and it happens sometimes.
And also too, I want to point out that usually people that have regrets about having abortion is because other people put that onto them. They made them feel guilty.
They were called
a
murderer as they walked into the clinic and out of the clinic.
or just people in their families. Like your 16-year-old they get knocked out by a boyfriend or whatever, and they decide to have an abortion, and then they're come from a conservative family, and then they are called like a slut, and that they're terrible because they make those choices. It's because other people put that onto them. If people feel supportive and that you made the choice that was right for you, they don't have that feeling of regret at that level.
Yeah, wasn't there just recently a person in Florida that was denied an abortion because she wasn't deemed mature enough?
Yes, she was not mature enough to make that decision to have an abortion.
How do you even say that without, like, do you not see what you just said? Like, it takes more maturity to decide to have an abortion than it does to raise a fucking child? Like, what?
I feel like, all right, I just feel like I'm constantly living in crazy town. Like, that's what I feel a lot of the time. Like, I'm just looking around, observing everything, and like, it makes you go like, am I crazy? And then I'm like, no, wait, no, I'm not. Because I think that if you decide to have an abortion, sorry, then you should be able to do that, because you're like, hey, I don't think it's good for me to raise a child for 18 years. Well, it would not be a good thing.
Apparently, I'm seeing in the chat that it was specifically because of her grade point average. It's like, is having a kid going to make that go up or down? Probably down, I'd think. Less time to study if you're changing poopy diapers at 3 a.m.
How many times have we heard about, like, teenagers that get forced into having children, or they decide to keep their kids, and they always stay, right around the poverty line, lower middle class, never go on to secondary education, work dead-end jobs, are constantly financially struggling, end up divorced, end up as single parents over and over and over again. Like, this is because children should not be having children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a fact. So we're drawing to the end of the time that I allot for streaming. My daughter comes down for emergency cuddles around 10 o'clock every night. So,
well, I understand that, and you should always give emergency cuddles.
So, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. You've done a great job at, like, pulling me back around to what we're supposed to be talking about tonight when I go off track.
Listen, between our two ADHD brains, like, we have one good brain.
We got it done. So we raised $165. I was hoping for a bit more, but that's not
every
bad.
Little bit helps. Yeah. Every little bit helps. And
if you're watching this after the fact, this will be running for a month after the stream is live. So if you're watching this in a replay, you can still donate. So that's not a final number, but that's what we raise now.
Yeah, and again, thank you so much for even putting on a fundraiser. Like, I just want to sit here and listen to myself talk for an hour and a half. So, like, thank you so much.
Makes my
also,
job
too,
easier.
those of you who are listening, if you know someone that would not only on our reproductive rights task force, or you know someone that would benefit from recovering from religion, please refer them to us. Go to recoveringfromreligion.org, or reach our helpline, which when I'm blanking on the phone number. Oh my God, I'm such a bad ambassador. 187, I doubt it. Or 186. I doubt it.
It's 84.
184, I doubt it.
I remember that because I remember seeing it on the website today, thinking 84.
I'm going to
get
a talking to by Dr. Ray later. Anyway, please refer them to us on whatever they need. We have a wonderful, awesome community. I've met awesome friends there. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. So, thank you so much for having me on and having such an important discussion that really, we should all be having.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I guess I'm going to roll the credits now. I'm pretty sure they're not going to actually have the music that they're supposed to have, because if you follow me on Twitter, you saw me post about forgetting something important I had to do for work. It was setting the stream up properly. So it was literally like 2 minutes before we were going live. I was still like on the back end fixing things. And so, it is what it is. So thanks for joining me. Have a great night.